Good evening. Welcome to City Council. If you could just take a moment and silence your cell phones, and please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before I begin the reading from the agenda, I wanted to take a moment I had asked Maggie to make a note on my calendar to take a moment to remember the 11 people that died in Pittsburgh earlier in October. And sadly, since that incident, we've had yet another gun violence incident in America. But I just wanted to take a moment to recognize those events and show our appreciation for the community in Asheville who came together so quickly for a vigil that hundreds attended here in the downtown. That was a really wonderful coming together of our community in the face of such horrific acts. So with that, I wanted to just mention that. Thank you. We have two proclamations on the agenda this evening. The first is Diabetes Awareness Month, and Councilman Young is going to present the proclamation, and Jackie Stewart is she here? Yes, please come on forward. And if you have anybody else with you, they're welcome as well. Sure, that's absolutely fine, absolutely fine. I can't believe they're not on the street right now.
Asheville proclamation in the states. Whereas diabetes affects 29.1 million people, 9.3% of the population in the United States, and is a serious disease for which there is no known cure, and which is the 7th leading cause of death by disease in the United States. And whereas approximately 1/4 of the Americans who have diabetes, 8.1 million or 27.8% of people do not know they have the disease and may experience damage to the heart, eyes, kidneys, and limbs without producing any symptoms. And whereas another 86 million, or 1 in 3 American adults, has prediabetes, a condition which puts them at a greater risk for developing type 2 diabetes, and if current trends continue, 1 in 3 American adults will have diabetes by 2050. And whereas type 1 diabetes, also known as T1D, is an autoimmune disease in which a person's pancreas stops producing insulin, a hormone that enables people to get energy from food. It occurs when the body's immune system attacks and destroys the insulin-producing cells in the pancreas called beta cells. And whereas 1.25 million Americans are living with T1D, including about 200,000 youth less than 20 years old, and over 1 million adults 20 years and older. 40,000 people are diagnosed each year in the U.S. 5 million people in the U.S. are expected to have T1D by 2050, including 600,000 youth. Between 2001 and 2009, there was a 21% increase in the prevalence of T1D in people under the age of 20. $14 billion T1D associated annual healthcare costs in the United States. And whereas diabetes has many faces affecting everyone, young and old alike, Caucasians, African Americans, Latinos, Native Americans, Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, with minority populations in the United States having increased risk for developing the disease, and whereas an increase in community awareness of risk factors and symptoms related to diabetes can improve the likelihood that people with diabetes will get the attention they need before suffering the devastating complications of the disease. Now therefore, I, Esther E. Manheimer, Mayor of the City of Asheville and City Council of the City of Asheville do hereby proclaim November 2018 as Diabetes Awareness Month. If you all would like to say a few words, you can address it.
Hello, I wasn't expecting to say a few words, but since I was offered the chance, thank you very much for allowing us to do this. My name is Jackie Stewart. I am a parent of a child with type 1 diabetes, and our group here tonight represents people living with type 1 as well as parents of children with type 1. It's a very misunderstood disease. It's very different from type 2. There's no known cure and there's no known cause. It is not because of eating too much sugar or not exercising enough. So I appreciate that you all have given us an opportunity to be here tonight and to prepare that proclamation for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And we have one other proclamation tonight, and that is Care for Caregivers Day. And Terry Bellamy is here with a crew. Please bring them all forward. Good work. Big numbers. Big.
Whereas there are approximately 44 million Americans who are serving as a loved one or another adult's primary caregiver, and whereas many of the caregivers are not appropriately prepared to serve in that capacity, and they often are plagued with health issues of their own, and whereas over 50% of the individuals who are caregivers are also employed full-time, and unfortunately, over 70% of those who are employed experience issues at work due to the dual roles that they maintain. And whereas one of the growing issues that goes unaddressed and receives limited media exposure is the need for support for caregivers. And whereas Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated is the first Greek letter sorority brought into being in 1908 as a support network for women of color. Alpha Kappa Alpha's mission is to cultivate and encourage high scholastic and ethical standards, to promote unity and friendship among college women, to study and help alleviate problems concerning girls and women in order to improve their social stature, to maintain a progressive interest in college life, and to be of service to all mankind. It is promoting the need to recognize and support those who care for loved ones by providing them quality, compassionate care on a daily basis. And whereas the Gamma Gamma Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha has organized a free event that is open to the public entitled Care for Caregivers, to recognize caregivers and provide much needed support and to honor the important work they do for others. And whereas Care for Caregivers is scheduled for Friday, November 16th, 2018 at noon and will be held on the campus of Elida Home in the park facility. And now, therefore, I, Esther Mannheimer, Mayor of the City of Asheville, and the City Council of the City of Asheville, do hereby proclaim November 16, 2018 as Care for Caregivers Day in Asheville, North Carolina, and urge all citizens to join me in this special observance. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, for this opportunity, and to Mayor and City Council, thank you so very much for recognizing caregivers who serve our community. I also want to say thank you for taking the time to recognize the individuals who are impacted by gunfire and opening up, and as well as diabetes. But this proclamation for us means a great deal because we think about the individuals within our own chapter who serve as caregivers. And so we were just talking about one of our members who's caring for another member who fell today. And unfortunately, because she fell, our caregiver couldn't be here. But a couple of things, caregivers are often overlooked. We never say thank you to those individuals who make sure they check on us or give us food. And so this is an opportunity for caregivers to get appreciated. For our chapter to say that we appreciate the work that you're doing for your loved one or for people who you may be employed by. But the biggest thing is to say thank you and to show the appreciation and support. So thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, moving into our consent agenda. This is a short consent agenda for us. But are there any questions, comments, any items to be discussed separately on the consent agenda? Or a motion?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Second.
Brian actually beat you to it.
Oh, sorry.
Brian, you got to speak up.
So I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there anyone wishing to comment on the motion to approve the consent agenda? No? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We have three reports tonight. One is online only, but we have two live reports. And the first one is the Asheville Police Department Open Data. And Jamie Matthews is going to make this presentation. This is, I don't know, what, third installment in an ongoing process that council asked for to have some reporting about the progress being made here on the Open Data project.
Oh, and I did it by myself this time.
And you did it by,
Okay, good evening, mayors and members of council. I'm Jamie, and I'm happy to be back to give you guys a really brief update on where we are with APD and Open Data. So since our last update, I'm happy to report that we have released the emergency call data and APD citizen complaint data. These went out today, and they're now available on the city's Open Data portal. So here's a list of the requests and more check marks by the ones that we have completed. The ones that we have not completed but are still working towards are the use of force, which is hopefully going to be released in the next couple of weeks. We had another meeting last week with the community members, and thank you, Councilman Haynes, for continuing to attend those. And we discussed the use of force data again. We looked at it together, and we're still working on how we can improve explaining that data and how it is reported in the Open Data portal. The citizen and arrest data, now that the use emergency data has been released, the county staff has begun working on that, and we'll get a better update once they start that and start to work with our IT department. And the demographic information for all city employees, we're still working with HR. A representative from our HR department, Shannon Barrett, attended the last community meeting and explained that process. They're working to make sure that that's correct. But again, that will be released hopefully in the next few months or so, but I'll continue to give you guys updates. So the next steps is just continued work with APD, IT, and our community partners to release the remaining data and work with them to improve what we have released and continue that conversation. So that's where we are.
Quick question.
Sure.
In the last budget work session that we had 2 weeks ago, I had asked a question about data related to the calls for service, and could we get that information? Does any of this, does the 911 new data set answer that question, or is that a different?
And what was the specific
It was
question?
so there was it was essentially kind of what they are. There was a big number about calls for service and how that's increasing, and I think I was interested in how does that break down in terms of the kinds of calls.
Right, and we're working on that specifically.
Okay.
This
is
I'm
different.
not sure exactly if you could use this data to do that, but we will be responsive
Okay,
to that
all right.
question.
Just
Yeah.
wanting to make it efficient if that's possible.
Yeah.
Thank you.
any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Jamie.
You're welcome.
Okay, and then Chief Burnett
So anxious.
to talk to us about City Council strategic priorities and updates.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. Scott Burnett, Interim Assistant City Manager. Pleased tonight to provide you with a brief update on your strategic operating plan. My goal is to be more succinct than my good friend Greg Schuler was earlier at the budget work session.
That fast talker.
Yeah. Nice.
Equitable and diverse community. We're pleased to welcome Yashika Smith. Yashika joined our team in October to serve as our Inclusive Engagement and Leadership Manager. Her role is to provide opportunities to connect, coordinate, collaborate, and engage residents of Asheville whose voices and needs have been traditionally missing from civic processes and decision making. As a native of Asheville, Yashika has significant relationships and access to networks who have felt disenfranchised and not included. The second position, the training consultant, should begin in November. Equity Core Team number 2, they began their training in October to support the implementation and tracking of the Equity Action Plan, as well as develop a budget analysis tool. The Office of Equity and Inclusion has been working closely with HR to analyze and change practices to become a more equitable employer. We have partnered with Buncombe County government to increase opportunities for networking, professional development, and improved communication across organizations with employees of color by sponsoring, promoting, and supporting a Professionals of Color and Public Service Employee Resource Group, which connects quarterly. The city is working toward a late fall completion of the northern half of the French Broad River Greenway East. Paving has now been completed from the current Lyman Street Riverside Drive intersection to just north of the Railroad Trestle Bridge. A community celebration of the newly installed Big Fish sculpture and the first section of paved greenway on the west bank of the French Broad River has been scheduled for November 30th. The Big Fish is an environmental educational sculpture developed under a partnership led by Asheville Greenworks. We also have plans to begin construction in the spring of 2019 on future French Broad River West. This property is located between New Belgium Brewing and the French Broad River Park. In advance of construction, the City of Asheville has now closed this section until all work is complete. The City of Asheville is preparing to begin work on the Charlotte Street Corridor Improvement Project. Traffic and Planning Design Incorporated will be conducting community outreach, surveying, technical design, bidding, and construction administration. A public meeting is anticipated to be scheduled between January and February 2019 with a projected finish date around summer-fall 2019. Work is underway on the first group of playgrounds and sport courts to be renovated with funding from the bond referendum passed in 2016. $1 million was allocated to each project as part of this referendum. Some work has already been completed, with the expectancy to reopen at least one playground by spring 2019 and 2 of the sport courts this fall. The Office of Sustainability, in collaboration with Development Services, earned the City of Asheville a gold designation for the National Soul Smart program for making it faster, easier, and more affordable for homes and businesses to go solar. Over the past year, the Office of Sustainability has been working with Development Services on how to permit and inspect solar systems in order to streamline permits of residential solar systems to a maximum of 3 business days. They also help train our first responders on how to safely handle solar panels that they may encounter during emergencies. Council recently passed a resolution establishing a 100% renewable energy goal. To determine what it will take, the city has partnered with the county to develop a renewable energy roadmap. Staff is also analyzing current city-owned property to determine the solar feasibility. Funding for solar panels on the Arch Station bus canopy has been secured. This will be the city's first net zero building, as the panels will power the station entirely, with any additional power generated being sold to Duke Energy. The Riparian Enhancement Plan project was recently completed. The plan was created in order to provide community groups and staff with an outline of water quality improvement projects that can be implemented along the riverbanks and riparian zone of the Rad Tip study area, and serve as an inspiration for other riparian projects along the French Broad and Swannanoa riverfronts. The city's climate resilience assessment was adopted as an appendix to the comprehensive plan in June. Efforts are currently underway to develop a toolkit to help residents build resilience on their own property. As part of these efforts, we have contracted with Asheville Greenworks to conduct 5 free composting workshops around the city. Mayor Manheimer recently took part in a panel discussion on environmental sustainability at the Bloomberg Sustainable Business Summit in New York. She spoke with CGTN America about the role cities play in sustainability and how the use of green bonds benefits our long-term project goals for sustainability and renewable energy consumption. This is a clip from CGTN.
In 2017,
Don't be
the
alarmed.
U.S. pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement. The move signaled a reversal from the Obama administration that prioritized fighting climate change. But many U.S. business leaders and local politicians remain committed to sustainability.
We had to live on the planet and watch what's happening out there. As a furniture manufacturer who's using a lot of wood, we have a good chance to make a difference by saying we're only going to buy work where we go where we know the chain of custody was, that it was sustainably grown.
Alva was one of dozens of speakers from the worlds of business, finance, and politics that took the stage at the Bloomberg Sustainable Business Summit in New York. The goal of the meeting was to bring together thought leaders to discuss the risks and opportunities around sustainability.
One of the topics discussed at this year's summit was focused on cities and the increasingly important role that they are playing in mitigating climate change, as well as creating a marketplace for sustainable investment.
I think cities are trying to fill in the gap and make sure they step up and lead the way. And that really is driven by our constituency. They're demanding it.
Asheville, a city of roughly 90,000 people nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, is known for being progressive. It became the first city in the state to issue so-called green bonds, debt that backs projects that are positive for the environment.
What a green bond does for us is it creates a larger investment community. So whereas a traditional bond might just attract a traditional investor, we're not harnessing those investors that really want to invest their dollars into sustainability.
Demand for green bonds has been booming. Last year, municipal green bond issuance in the U.S. hit $11 billion. That's a 55% increase from 2016. A lot of this investment has been driven by millennial investors for whom sustainability is a high priority. Clearly, the business community and politicians have taken notice. Karina Huber, CGTN, New York.
I didn't plant that, you did that.
The city is working on a strategy to solve affordable housing challenges through the redevelopment of city-owned land. Over the next few weeks, staff will submit recommendations to City Council on the redevelopment of 171, 179 South Charlotte Street, and 2 additional city-owned properties. The proposals will focus on the outcomes of the affordable housing feasibility studies, which are now underway. Additionally, staff will make presentations to various boards, including Housing and PED, leading up to a City Council vote in December. The Lee Walker Heights redevelopment project has received a 4% tax credit approval, and plans are set to move forward with construction in the spring of 2019. On October 11th, a workshop co-sponsored by the City of Asheville was held for residents to have a chance to learn how to take advantage of updated zoning regulations. City Council approved changes that reduced lot dimensional standards by 20% and gave incentives to allow for more housing units in multifamily zoning districts. These regulations allow for a greater variety and encourage more efficient land use patterns. Work is ongoing on the River Arts District Transportation Improvement Project. The temporary traffic pattern through the new Riverside Drive roundabout is now in place and will remain until springtime, when the remainder of the roundabout can be constructed and the final traffic pattern put into use. This winter, grading and stormwater installation for the new roadway and greenway will occur on Lyman Street from the new roundabout to Amboy Road. As part of a collaboration with Asheville on Bikes and other organizations, a tactical urbanism project has been completed on a stretch of Cox Avenue between Banks and Buxton Avenues. A temporary street mural was installed with painted shared pedestrian and bike facilities and streetscape features. Improvements to the downtown art station are expected to start in early 2019. This will include renovation of the waiting room, platform improvements, and restroom upgrade and expansion, include multiple stalls and baby changing tables. There will also be additional signage with route and schedule details. The renovation will also include the aforementioned solar panels on the roof to power the facility. A new real-time app has been launched for Asheville Art bus riders. Users can see when buses are set to arrive, as well as map out their bus ride to get you where you want to go. Asheville's comprehensive plan calls for the city to transition in a direction that strengthens urban transit corridors and connects urban centers. This will begin with rezonings at nodes along commercial corridors that will lead to a greater mix of uses and more residential development. The urban place zoning allows for a significantly greater residential density. The final stages of the disparity study have been completed. The goal of the study remains to assess whether minority and female-owned businesses face any barriers as part of the city's contracting processes. Information from the study will help inform the city's implementation of the MWBE program and help the city better encourage the participation of these businesses in the future. The city has taken on a supporting role in launching Mountain BizWorks Test Drive program, which aims to promote a vibrant local business ecosystem within Asheville by giving new entrepreneurs, especially those with limited means, the opportunity to further develop and enhance their business ideas in a microcosm of Asheville's dynamic marketplace. Pre-revenue and startup businesses can sample, market, and sell their merchandise at the region's most well-attended events in Asheville by setting up in donated tent space and taking a test drive with their new business. In the inaugural year of the Visiting Artist Project, the finalist, Art Ecology, was chosen in October by a leadership team. Their choice was informed by a community engagement process that included an online survey with over 200 responses. Tonight, the city came to council with a contract for Art Ecology in the beginning of 2019. Project implementation will occur in spring and summer of 2019. Beginning in the month of October, Asheville residents were invited into city budget process through neighborhood meetings. 4 public meetings were held in 4 different Asheville regions from October to November, with city staff and city council members available to answer questions and connect with the community. This year's Festival of Neighborhoods, organized by the City of Asheville's Neighborhood Advisory Committee, brought together neighborhoods from all parts of the city, representing 14 associations. 12 city departments were on hand to answer questions for attendees. There's been an overall positive response to the event from community members. The International Association of Public Participation just held a training session. We had 25 city staff members representing 12 departments through the Foundation's course on planning techniques for better public engagement. In an effort to increase transparency and engagement leading into fiscal year 19-20 budget processes, staff has been providing detailed departmental information to council and the community in budget work sessions, beginning in August and ending in December this year. This has provided an opportunity for community members to get a detailed account of city operations, departmental challenges and opportunities, and key resources that are required to deliver city services. In addition to the work sessions, city staff and council members have been participating in public meetings throughout different Asheville regions in October and November. The city also has an online dashboard available for anyone to access, allowing community members to stay engaged and informed about city spending and bond use. Here's that dashboard, and the link for that is available on the City of Asheville website, but it is dashboards.ashevillennc.gov/capital projects. With that, that concludes my presentation. We'll be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Anyone have any questions? Very good. Thank you. Okay, that concludes the presentations portion of our evening. The final one regards I-26, and it is online only.
Okay, well then I just need to say
Do you want to
something.
say something about it?
Yeah,
'Cause
yeah,
it's just
for sure.
there's a link so people can look at the
Yeah, so
update.
people should look at that, but here's the big news about I-26 is that DOT over the next 2 months is going to be holding 2 public hearings. So the first one is scheduled for December 4th. My understanding is there will be an open house from 4 to 6, and then the public hearing starting at 7 o'clock, all at the Renaissance Hotel downtown. And this first public hearing will be to review the latest maps on I-26. And I'm not going to call them final maps, just for a number of reasons. There are still some questions outstanding. Because this is being done as a design-build project, things could change in the future. In our view, they would change only for the better. So I won't call them final, but they're pretty darn close. So that is one public hearing. DOT is then planning to hold another public hearing they're planning in January. We'll see if that timing works. And that will be then on the final environmental document, the final environmental impact statement for this project. The last public hearing that we had on this project was back in November of 2015. So it's been a nice long time. And what I will say is that these are probably our last 2 public hearings on this project. So this is the last opportunity for public input. It is not the last opportunity for input generally because of our work with DOT over the last 2 years, 2 to 3, almost 3 years now. That is a good relationship, and DOT has committed to the city that collaborative relationship will continue as the project develops, as it goes to contract, as it goes into this design-build process. But from a standpoint of general public input, these 2 hearings are really the last opportunity. So for people who have been watching this project, for people who are interested in it, please come to those hearings. I'm sure the city will be putting out information about them when that information becomes available. And then we're off to the races. So all those folks who thought they would never see this project be built, it's coming. So.
Well, then that is our update about I-26. Yeah. Okay, we have only one item on our public hearings agenda, and I have a note here that it needs to be continued. This is a public hearing to consider an amendment to the UDO making all subdivisions and historic overlay districts and on local historic landmark properties a major work. This needs to be continued until December 11th. Do I have a motion to do that?
So moved.
Okay, and a second?
Second.
Second. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. Now we have a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Traffic Planning and Design, Inc. for the Charlotte Street Improvement Project. And before we begin that process, and I know we're going to hear a little bit about that, I do, just for the public that's here and maybe watching this, this has been an ongoing item that council has been looking at. Council has already adopted in an earlier, much earlier meeting, a resolution moving ahead with the plans. The item on our agenda tonight is only to authorize the contract for the design. It is not. This isn't a re-debate, discussion, rehashing, whatever, of whether or not to do it, because that has already been voted on. There was a resolution earlier that did that. So we probably received hundreds of emails about this. As you can imagine, North Asheville is very active. Thank you, North Asheville. And so we have a good flavor of the opinion of the community, I think. But we will allow folks to speak on this item, of course, but we have a rule that we limit public comment to 1 hour. Now, based on how many folks are here, that shouldn't be too much of a problem. But just to let you know, that's how we'll do it. And it's 3 minutes for individuals, 10 minutes if you're speaking for a group, the three people who are waiving their time must be present here. They must let us know who they are, and then they will not speak on the item if that's how you plan to address council. And what we may also do is, if there's people here are for or against, we might alternate just to make sure we don't get loaded up on one side or the other. All right, ready? All right.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Jay Dundas, Capital Projects Director. It's already been said, is essentially we're here today to present a contract or seek authorization to enter into a contract with transportation and design for transportation planning and design services for the Charlotte Street Improvements Project. As stated, this was moving forward after council's direction in April to engage in design services associated with moving this project forward. So if there's any questions, I can certainly try to answer. And we also have staff from transportation and other departments here that could also be helpful.
I do think it's helpful to have a little bit of history about this project, but I don't know if we have anyone here who can provide that, because I don't see Ken. Oh, you are here, Ken. I don't know if you're prepared to speak on your feet about kind of where we've been, how far we've come, how we got here, if you will.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Ken Putnam. I'm the Transportation Department Director. Over the course of time, there's been several planning type studies that have been done on this corridor, and many of those studies also included the idea of a three-lane concept. Back in 2012, we did an actual traffic analysis study that would try to determine if a three-lane concept would work, or if there'd be major issues and that sort of thing. And that study was done and approved by council in August of 2013. Basically, the conclusion is that one of the things when you have a four-lane section is that a lot of times the two inside lanes serve as de facto left turn lanes, especially during peak times, so that the people that are going straight through, they tend to move over to the curb lane so that they don't have to jog in and out of the traffic or get stopped behind the line of traffic that's trying to turn left. So that's one of the things that proved true when the analysis was done in this case. Another thing that we've got is that when you're going northbound on Charlotte Street, and you're even beginning as you're going across the I-240 bridges, the through traffic is already put into one lane as it goes up through, and then when they pass the Chestnut Street intersection, they can disperse into two lanes going northbound. One of the things that they determined, they did say that if we did reduce it to a three-lane section, that there would be an increase over time in delays. So for example, if there's delays, say 3 or 4 hours a day now during the various peaks, then there you might add a few hours to that, or a couple hours to that at each peak time. Obviously, when you look at traffic between, say, 11 o'clock at night and 6 o'clock in the morning, there are no issues with traffic on many roads. So the idea that the road would be totally shut down all the time is really not true on any given road where there's higher volumes. The queue lengths would determine that by the year 2035 that they could be significant in some areas. That was another area. The traffic volumes are highest between the I-240 ramps and also Chestnut Street. And then there's a range of around 13,000 or so up to 18,000 above Chestnut Street. The idea of having the 4 lanes would, when you compare it straight to the 3-lane section, would probably perform better as far as moving traffic. And then the consultant also did one other option where it was a hybrid approach of doing part of it 3 lanes and the other part 4 lanes, keeping it 4 lanes. And that's actually what council approved earlier, was to do that, so that the 3-lane section would begin at Chestnut Street going north, and the 4 lanes would remain in place going south back towards the interstate. one of the things that does cause the queues, especially in the morning, to be greater than, say, other streets that we have in the city is that the signalization at the ramps, when the green is given for the folks coming through the open cut, trying to turn left to come into town, that green band is very long to try to clear it out so that no one is stuck out on the interstate. But in time, working with the DOT, we can probably make adjustments to that as the project goes forward.
Right. You're talking about how they line up at the I-20, I-240 intersection along Charlotte Street going south in the morning, say?
Yes, ma'am. That's correct.
Can you, the scope of the project that we're looking at here is curb to curb. We're dealing with the actual street, and not the sidewalks. And I know that there is, help me understand what the total project would look like in terms of is there a staff process that's looking at the whole corridor, so it will include the pedestrian amenities eventually, so that we're not just talking about the street experience, but also the sidewalk experience?
That's correct. The primary focus will be the street footprint. That's number one. But the other thing that the consultant will be looking at will be at spot improvements along the entire corridor. And we already, in having previous meetings with the business owners in the community out there, we already have a list of things that we've identified that would be targeted to be studied further. One example would be at the intersections where Broad and Baird come in, they're kind of offset.
Yeah.
And we've already installed a crosswalk at that intersection, and we have the warning flashes there now. But we would ask that consultant to also identify if there's anything else that needs to be done to make that movement for the pedestrians friendlier and safer.
Right. But in terms of, right now the sidewalk width, it varies on the street. In some places it's still quite narrow, and you have the telephone poles or the electric poles. Is there a plan long-term to take a look at that part of the street and what kinds of improvements we might need to make in that area?
Yeah, I think on this project, on this design phase, that would just be looked at more of a high level, because we already know that in order, for example, to put all the utilities underground, we don't have enough money to fully do that. So we're trying to keep everything confined to the money that's already been approved, but then to give some steps that we could go further with other improvements. And the challenge with the sidewalks, of course, will be that ideally it would be nice to be able to widen the sidewalks to the outside, But we have a couple of sections right there near Fuddruckers where there's that wall that's up against the back of the sidewalk. So that kind of limits that unless we were to take that
On
out.
the Fuddruckers side?
No, on the opposite side of
on
Fuddruckers.
the opposite side.
But on the same side as Fuddruckers where the butcher shop is, of course, that's a building there. So it's
Right.
virtually impossible to move that.
Well, hopefully, Kathy, as we're going to be seeing the Fuddruckers project come forward, I would hope that we would think about the sidewalk improvements needed there as that, if that project advances. Because I do think long-term there's an expectation that we address the sidewalk issues along the Charlotte Street corridor. I never hold out hope that Duke will underground all the power lines, but we have been able to move power poles so we can accommodate wider sidewalks in some areas where we've made improvements. So, Hendersonville Road, for example. So it would be nice to think about that corridor comprehensively, because I don't think you'll see greatest level of change unless we can put all the changes in place.
And Ken, I would ask you to kind of, when you talk about the pedestrian experience, if we're adding a bike lane and slowing traffic down, I'm assuming that will improve the pedestrian
Right,
experience
you'll have that
as well.
buffer.
Yes, that's true, because that'll become the buffer. And one of the limitations, of course, we have is the street width is 40 feet. So, but
Right.
that would give a good 5-foot buffer on both sides that would tend to help the pedestrians as well.
Okay. And hopefully, we don't have any images of a road diet here to display tonight, but maybe we could find some if we need some. Okay, so the way this works, since it's under new business, I will need a motion and a second first, and then I will take public comment. Since this is not a public hearing, we don't start with public comment. So do I have a motion and a second? Go ahead.
I make a motion to adopt the resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Traffic Planning and Design, Inc. to provide survey, public engagement, design, bidding, and construction administration services for the Charlotte Street Improvement Project for an amount not to exceed $155,000, and further authorizing the city manager to execute any contract amendments up to 10% above the contract price.
Second, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all right, we have a motion and a second. All right, so if you would like to speak on this item, go ahead and raise your hand and we'll start this process and see how it goes. Okay, so let's start over here. So just remember to state your name and that you have 3 minutes to speak. Watch the lights on the lectern. That'll kind of give you an idea of where you're at in the process. And just grab it.
I'll pull that down.
Just
Okay.
pull it down.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I'm Nancy Hutchins, and I serve on the board of the Grove Park Sunset Mountain Neighborhood Association. That's a mouthful, and I'm speaking on the board's behalf tonight, but I'll also add that I'm a lifelong resident of Asheville, and the last 30 years have been in North Asheville. So anyway, I'm just going to move forward with the statements that have been prepared for me by our board. Improving safety for pedestrians, bikes, and vehicles on Charlotte Street is an important initiative, and the decisions made on this project will impact residents throughout Asheville for decades. So this board is asking for the following 5 things before any taxpayer money is spent on design services. So some of this has been maybe addressed a little bit. 1, please postpone tonight's decision to fund the design process. Considering the varied expectations and misinformation, it seems the wisest thing to do. 2, review past traffic studies, conclusions, and the recommendations from those studies. So in hearing this, we have the copy of the city's 2013 traffic study showing the number of cars per day during lowest periods and peak periods. The conclusion was that a road diet would have very negative consequences. Given that those numbers are 5 years old, how did Charlotte Street suddenly become a viable candidate for a road diet? Number 3, asking for planning ahead, which we know is being worked on. How has this proposed new development, apartments on Charlotte Street, increased the traffic? The intersection of Charlotte and Chestnut is already dangerous and overburdened. It's unrealistic that drivers will switch to bikes or walk. Instead, they will spill onto small side streets. Those that really need the bus or car to get to work are going to face inevitable delays. With and without the Charlotte Street lane reductions, what plans are in place to address unwanted traffic on small side streets? Number 4, return to the original priority of pedestrians first and beef up the budget for Charlotte Street Improvement Project to include impactful sidewalk improvements, which you were just speaking on. The badly needed stormwater mitigations and the unknowns of the aging infrastructure will quickly consume the project budget. People already use the sidewalks and would walk more if they were improved. Better sidewalks already have broad support, and a user group will easily grow. And then number 5, restart neighborhood engagement and include the neighborhoods north of Edwin. Anyone who uses Charlotte Street or Merriman to access 240 or downtown is affected by this road diet, yet North Asheville neighborhoods have not been a part of the engagement process. And given the importance of getting this project right, engagement of all stakeholders is critical to its success. And I'll just add on that I've not known of any community meetings, asking for input. So,
Thank you.
Anyway, thank you.
So how about a pro? A yes over here? Okay. Go ahead. I'll just try to flop it back and forth.
Hi, Council. I'm Sissy Dindy, and I'm just going to speak from my little group and myself. I am a resident of North Asheville. My daddy bought my house in 1940, and at least from 1953 until now, I have regularly walked from Hillside to Clayton over to Central with my dog. I catch the bus. I also ride. Thank you for the new improvement that's right there at Broad where you can cross. But tonight when I was on my way here, it's starting to get dark. The young couple who were trying to cross to the restaurant Traffic going southbound did stop. Traffic going northbound was probably going 30 miles an hour through there and did not stop. I think that what I've heard about this road diet is going to make it, for those of us who drive, when we need to drive, a little tougher. We already have the cuts through in our neighborhoods. That's going to continue. I think that this road diet that they're talking about, that Charlotte Street Business District is talking about, will help. So I am very pro, and I know a lot of the people in my neighborhood right there are interested. I thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and then an opposed. Any more opposed? Yes? Okay. Yes. Sorry, it's not a very exact science. Man in the tie. Okay.
I swear the buttons I'm supposed to watch for here.
They're the lights right there.
Oh.
It's 3 minutes. Maggie just
That's
started
great.
it. So green means go.
Hello, I'm John Kerr. I'm co-owner of Metro Wines. It's a business located on Charlotte Street. I'd like to summarize my position, discuss a little bit about how we got here. Again, I'll just say all I know is what I hear and been through. I don't have all the information you do. My position is I really am adamantly opposed to the bike lanes on a business corridor that is going to be as busy as Charlotte Street. It's dangerous even with 3-lane option, and I think it's contrary to the neighborhood equity goal that you all strive for. And I think it does better serve the public to have safe streets and safer sidewalks. This putting off the sidewalks for long term, I think, is a mistake. It does not help the community nor the business itself. And if you are looking to do another study, I ask you to please reconsider. I think the money would be better spent on the sidewalks and the drainage systems. I think we've had enough studies already. A little bit of a brief timeline about, I think, how we got here. Our original goal of the business, Charlotte Street Business Group, was safety and sidewalks. And we did ask some of the staff that work with you to look into this. And we did ask for things like better sidewalks, traffic cameras, and there are a number of other options used by other cities. The city staff we talked to did decline one of the things we thought was an effective, low-cost, revenue-generating option, which were the cameras. And because they would not consider the cameras or other options, we did end up signing up for the 3-lane option. After that, some of the staff began to work with only a faction of the Charlotte Street business people, and those were the people who were focused, I think, more on bike lanes rather than on safety on the streets. I will just finish by saying that we now have cars going up to 65 miles an hour in the 25-mile zone. I see that every day out of my shop window, and I know you've clocked it on your equipment as well. So we do ask that this be, something be done quickly in this area, but I don't think bike lanes is a part of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? All right, thank you.
Okay, someone for. Okay, yes.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Marianne Mooney. I live in Chestnut Hill. Thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight. I just want to ask you all to support pedestrian safety and bike-friendly streets and proceed with the road diet improvements to Charlotte Street. As a resident of Chestnut Hill who does a lot of walking, I wholeheartedly approve the direction the city of Asheville is heading with the road plan for Charlotte Street. My husband and I patronize many businesses on Charlotte, and we walk to them, although walking on those sidewalks can feel like you're taking your life in your hands. And I do appreciate that you've at least talked about removing the electric poles, which makes no sense at all to have in the middle of the sidewalk. Shrinking the road through the planned road diet would make pedestrians and bikers safe. It would also enhance the historical charms of Charlotte Street and make it a destination spot that would attract more people, as well as being a lovely gateway to the Grove Park area. The road work would affect just 0.7 of a mile on Charlotte. The streets from the north that feed into Charlotte are 1 lane with a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. The speed limit in the road diet is 25, although not many cars stick to that speed, which makes it dangerous for pedestrians. Asheville streets need to be safer in general and not viewed merely as commuter corridors. Studies have found that road diets allow cars to move on city streets just as easily as expanding lanes. Folks who complain about having less lanes may not realize this. It's also been shown that road diets are good for local businesses, and it is a mandate of North Carolina Department of Transportation that streets should be complete streets with bike lanes and safe passage for pedestrians. Please stick to the plan as is and don't be swayed by just people who want to speed through the neighborhood. This will be such an improvement for the businesses on Charlotte and for the neighborhoods of Chestnut Hill and Albemarle Park, which border it. We'd have our own little mini downtown, and it would help to give a true center to our community. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Okay, and against? Yes. Sorry.
Mayor, council members, my name is Tony Shira. I've lived in Asheville for 42 years, all in the northern part of the city. I am very saddened to hear about a 3-lane reduction for Charlotte Street. I walk from near the Grove Park to downtown. It's about 2 miles. I have no problem with the sidewalks that we have. Could be better. I have no problem with it. I'm a runner. I run all over Asheville. This is not a problem on Charlotte Street. Unfortunately, this look at Charlotte Street, the change of Charlotte Street, is short-sighted. There is not a vision, meaning that when you consider putting in an apartment building where Fuddruckers is, you're now considering increasing the traffic in that area, while at the same time decreasing the availability of cars to move back and forth. That's my only way to town. I've got no other way to go. I must come on Charlotte Street, and I don't particularly prefer to sit there for 15 minutes at a time. Additionally, there's a lot that used to be an old Ingalls, a catty corner from Fuddruckers. That's going to be developed one of these days. And our hunger for development is ravenous, and we can talk about a road diet, but maybe we ought to look at the ravenous part of our hunger to expand and grow and actually lose what we've had in Asheville, which is a wonderful community that is accepting for all people. And we're losing that based on growth and now making things inaccessible to those of us that live here and making it very difficult for us. Thank you for your time. I hope you will reconsider this idea of moving Charlotte Street to 3 lanes. It doesn't need to happen. It can be a vote backwards and do something else and increase the sidewalks instead of the road diet that is the key word now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, 4, yes.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. Thank you for having me. My name is Benji Burrell. I live off Charlotte Street. My wife and I went downtown Charlotte Street, if you will, to have a burger at Bone and Broth last night. And great burger, loved it, but we almost got hit crossing from the west side of the Charlotte Street to the east side, walking up Baird. It's at the location where the crosswalk was just installed. The lights are not bright enough, and especially if you're taking a left off of Baird to go south on Charlotte Street, you can't even see the flashers that are there to indicate someone's trying to cross. So this is not the first time I've almost been hit. My dog and I have almost been hit crossing there to go patronize Charlotte Street Animal Hospital. So I don't think there's a reason to delay any safety improvements on Charlotte Street. I want drivers, bicyclists, and also pedestrians to have a safe ingress and egress to their homes and patronize businesses. So please don't delay this decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, against? Yes.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council. My name is Linda Sarubi. I've lived in Asheville for 35 years, just on Evelyn Place, north of where we're talking about. My biggest concerns is that over the last 35 years, and certainly within the last 25 years, there have been so many discussions about what to do on Charlotte Street. Most of the meetings that I have attended, people have talked about sidewalks, 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 that they feel that this is the area where there would be the most improvement. And the concern I have about spending $155,000 for another study is that in the $1.25 million projection, there is no money available for sidewalks. That has been eliminated. And given what we're talking about on sidewalks, that looks like a multi-million-dollar plan. And in looking at this, I went back and looked at all of the studies that have been done, and I reread them. I'm sure I attended meetings for them, but I did reread them. And I found a lot of evidence which indicated that a road diet is not going to work, specifically going from 4 to 3 lanes. In 1997, the City of Asheville Engineering Department concluded converting from 4 lanes to 3 would result in a worst-case scenario, level F conditions, which means breakdown of flow, gridlock, long queues, lack of maneuverability, unsafe for drivers and pedestrians. In 1999, the priority in that study said to go for safety in sidewalks. Improvement should be pedestrian focused. 2002, a 3-lane conversion would only be beneficial if sidewalks were improved. 2013, traffic volumes will increase, and it will be difficult to maintain acceptable conditions with 1 fewer lane. And finally, the Asheville in Motion study that was done in 2016 suggested sharrows and not a road diet, and said that a road diet needs the addition of feasibility studies. So I think we have a very mixed message here, and I am concerned that your plan, or the city council plan, to spend this money to do a study which would lead to this road diet is just not warranted by the studies. There simply isn't the evidence that it's going to work. I would much rather see $155,000 spent on improving the very inadequate crossways, trying to think of the word there, crosswalks, thank you very much, which are mediocre. And I have been in many communities where they are state-of-the-art crosswalks. I think that would improve safety. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to clarify, the funding tonight is not for a study, it is the actual planning, but I think that's what, the design of the.
And it does include intersection improvements like crosswalks and things like that as well.
A 4-person. Yeah, I was going to say, if you haven't made up your mind, I would like to make space for you. So yes, neutral. Why don't we hear a neutral, and then we'll hear a 4 over here.
My name is John Birkin. I'm a resident of Northern Asheville. Before then, I've been in the large cities of Boston, Cambridge, New York, and Washington. And I'm used to coping with large traffics and know how to do it. Every day, I travel on the Charlotte area, and having heard this, I've taken mental statistics of what goes on. The average wait time runs 3 to 5 traffic lights. If there are problems on 240, it can be lots longer. A potential solution for this might be to extend the left lane sufficiently to be able to handle 5 lights worth of traffic on the left side. If they're given the right, if they're provided a means of doing that left lane, that won't block the traffic the way it does now, and it's possible that might allow for dieting. What needs to be done is the traffic department needs to examine this, see if the flow is as good as it may be, and also do a very inexpensive test of the idea. If it fares out, we may have a solution to what could be a large potential problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we head back here, right.
Good evening, Council. My name is Clark Mackey. I'm a North Asheville resident. I live in Chestnut Hills. I moved there. I've lived in Asheville for 18 years. I moved to my house in Chestnut Hills because I wanted a safe place to raise my children. I have 2 young children right now. We looked at every neighborhood in Asheville. We looked at sidewalks, schools, connectivity, the tourists pouring into downtown, and we chose to renovate a house in Chestnut Hills that had been vacant for over a decade. We chose the area because of its great connectivity and because we saw the city's willingness to improve that, and we were strongly in favor of this road diet. Everything that I see about road diets reinforces what a good idea this is. When I read the Federal Highway Administration's documentation on road diets, and they talk about the safety for all users, when they talk about a diagram like this and how it reduces turning conflict between cars, you notice if you're taking a left turn, you only have to cross 1 lane of traffic, and in the current road, you have to cut across 2 lanes, and that creates a potential for a broadside. You notice that when a pedestrian has to cross the intersection here, you've got to walk across all 40 feet with cars moving 45 miles an hour, which is just what they were talking about in the crosswalks. And in the road diet, you have a much shorter, dangerous path. So I think once this changes in, everyone is going to love it. My family is strongly in favor of this. We appreciate your willingness to take all the things that we've learned, and we learned quite a lot since those traffic studies in the 1990s and early 2000s, and put it into play in our part of town. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else opposed that wants to speak? Because we heard already from, yes. That's, you know what, that's, yeah, that's Switzerland. You're fine, it's fine.
So, hi, City Council, Mayor. My name is Amy Kemp, and I'm a resident of Chestnut Hill neighborhood. And I am concerned because I understand that there is a certain budget that's been put aside for Charlotte Street, and that is about $1.2 to $1.4 million, and that most of that budget will go towards stormwater improvement. So I'm not sure how the budget is going to be allocated, how there's anything left in the budget for a road diet. And I don't understand how that really fits into the conversation. I know there's a lot of conversation about building up and densing out Charlotte Street, like with Fuddruckers. So if the intention is to have a denser Charlotte Street, a 4-lane road would be necessary. So in order to show that we don't intend to make Charlotte Street another dense corridor, we need to have a 3-lane road diet in place or something to signify that it is a neighborhood and it doesn't intend to become another part of downtown. But I would encourage you to provide us with information that substantiates what money is available and how it will be expended, and what part of the money will go towards stormwater mitigation, and what part of the money will go toward a road diet and actually making the changes to the street.
Good point.
Thank you.
Jade, do you want to address those now while it's fresh on everyone's mind?
We are trying to work on minimizing the stormwater improvements. We understand that there is some need there, but this will be those will actually be parts of this design effort. We'll have the designer take a look at what we can do to minimize stormwater improvements, if any. I mean, obviously, there are some ponding and some concerns in rain events right now, but it does function. So, but if there's a minimum amount of stormwater improvements that can be made, we'll also work through the actual resurfacing of this road is a significant part of this project. And so
Jade, to answer the question, so I think the concern is there's $1.25 million earmarked. Is that supposed to be used for stormwater and road resurfacing? Or if we need stormwater improvements, will we pull that from the stormwater fund and the 1.25 is used for this resurfacing?
If this was a major stormwater project, which again, we don't anticipate it to be, but we would look to the stormwater fund if there was any opportunity there to make those improvements. But again, we're trying to, there's limited capacity in the stormwater fund, so we're really just trying to figure out what the balance is with this project to minimize the improvements and be able to have a functional roadway.
So I guess to the city manager, you know, if we get done with this planning process and it looks like the cost to do this is going to exceed $1.25 million, which seems like it's a good probability, how would you anticipate managing that event?
So if there is, like Jade mentioned, if there are major stormwater improvements that will be paid from the Stormwater Enterprise Fund.
So we have a separate, because stormwater fees are collected separately, there is a Stormwater Enterprise Fund that is used to manage stormwater infrastructure improvements separately.
And I think that if it's incidental to the project, then that would just be included as part of that. So the project really consists of resurfacing and striping. So we have, just like with other projects, we've tried to be able to manage the design within the allowable budget. If it ends up that doesn't happen once we get the 30, 60, 90 estimates back, then we would come back to City Council.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there is a challenge in working on a project that's obviously a multi-year project in terms of pricing it. You earmark a certain amount of funds because you're trying to plan for that event, but you arrive at that destination and cost of construction go up. It's a difficult thing to estimate. But that was a good question. Okay, we had, somebody remind me, that was a neutral, and we did a for, a neutral, and now an against. Yes. Okay. Oh, you got to come up to the microphone. There are hundreds of people watching you at home on TV, so you have to, you need to stand at the microphone.
Hi, my name is Mary Ann Lee, and I'm here on behalf of my son Matthew Lee, who is unable to come. He's out of town, but he has written a letter to all of you council members and to Kathy Ball and to the president of the Grove Park Association about the fact that about a year ago, he had addressed some issues to Chad Bandy and Dustin Clemens about the mobility and disability issues on Charlotte Street, and was told at that time that the fixes would be addressed as part of the Charlotte Street Improvement Project. He's extremely disappointed to recently discover that the sidewalk improvement was removed from the project plans. He's in a wheelchair, he's a quadriplegic, he does not walk. He tries to get out and be as independent as possible. He loves the North Asheville, Charlotte Street area. He tries to participate in the businesses on Charlotte Street, and he has said that the sidewalks are narrow with no buffer from speeding traffic, lack of curb cuts in some spots, deep, steep curb cuts in other spots, cracked areas, uneven transitions, drainage issues and water pooling in sidewalk areas that slope down into the busy street. I would not describe the sidewalks as safe or ADA compliant in many areas. And the biggest thing he said, that he would really like to see you make Asheville a safe, accessible, inclusive, and welcoming city and community for all. So that's my comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Kathy, I do think I've heard some concern about the scope of the project not being as comprehensive as might be hoped for, and I think it's important for us to explain how we envision the long-term full scope of this project. That we're looking at the street improvement now, but that how the sidewalk issue will be incorporated into the long-range plan. Because I think without a doubt, I mean, if North Asheville could agree on something, it might be that the sidewalk situation in Charlotte Street needs improvement. So I think we've got to come up with a way to address that. I know one of the challenges is the number of curb cuts that Charlotte Street has, and it's always difficult with cities to try to get private property owners to agree to close up their curb cuts so you have more level sidewalk, as well as the width, because you know, I don't know how much right-of-way the city has and whether there's an issue about whether we have enough right-of-way to be able to widen the sidewalks at all. So, but I do think we need to be able to address those concerns because they're not going to go away. That is definitely a part of the overall scope of the project. It needs to include that. Okay, we now need an against. We don't need an against, but yes, there you go.
Good evening, all, and thank you. My name is Joe Sitterson. I've lived in North Asheville only for about 10 years. The phrase road diet, which I had not heard until recently, is a colorful and useful metaphor. And like many metaphors, it can also be misleading, and this is the neutral part. It metaphorically imagines the city as a human body, and its menu is composed of fatty foods, fat roads, and healthier foods, which presumably then would be narrower roads. The presupposition then in the argument is that healthy roads are not fat roads, and the city needs to narrow the roads simply intrinsically because of the nature of the metaphor. Now, there are lots of other reasons to talk about wider and narrower roads, but one of the attractions of a colorful metaphor like that is that's where you start. And you start with, what do we do about the roads, and how will that enable us to take care of pedestrian traffic and sidewalks and crosswalks? Another way to look at it is, and there's been a good deal of commentary tonight about this, is to start with, what can we do about sidewalks and crosswalks? And what effect would that have on what we might or might not need to do with roads? Thank you.
Okay, A4. Yes.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Jo Stevenson. I live within a block of Charlotte Street. I have done with my husband and my 4-year-old son. For 5 years, I've lived in Asheville for almost 20 years, predominantly in North Asheville. Myself and my family and a lot of our neighborhood, Sissy's one of my neighbors, are in strong favor of these safety improvements. Both myself and my husband are avid cyclists. We walk a lot. My son and I both walk and take the bus downtown to the library. We walk to Stephensley to do programs. We walk to his preschool. We spend a lot of time walking on Charlotte Street, and it is very, very, very dangerous. I think the safety improvements, someone said even without the sidewalk improvements, a bike lane will improve pedestrian safety and also improve cyclist safety. And what's frustrating and very disturbing to me is that the only opposition to this is to provide a more expeditious commute for motorists. People aren't willing to spend a few more minutes at a stoplight or slow down to improve the safety of their community members. And a lot of people who are opposed to this don't actually live in close proximity to Charlotte Street. They live north of the Edwin intersection. And like another neighbor said, this is a very, very small section of Charlotte Street. It's less than a mile. It's really not going to have an adverse effect on people's day. If you really think, if folks really think that this is going to affect their day, then set their alarms 5 minutes earlier. I mean, we had a meeting on this same subject several years ago. I think someone mentioned it was 2013 that we went through this similar process. And I remember speaking at the JCC on Charlotte Street, and the opposition was all about, I don't want to sit at a light for 2 minutes. I don't want to, come out of Starbucks and be jammed up in traffic. I just don't understand that mentality. I think the safety of our community is paramount. I think this will allow for better pedestrian access, better cyclist access. It might slow motorists down, but at the end of the day, it's a residential neighborhood. Historically, it's been a residential neighborhood, and it should remain that way. Thank you.
Thanks. I was trying to remember when that JCC meeting happened. Maggie, the thing is going to go off. Okay. I think there were a couple hundred people there. An against or a neutral. Okay. Or a for. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members, city staff.
My name is Mark DeVergis. I grew up here. I currently live on Sunset Drive, proud father of 3 children. My folks just live at the end of right by Beaver Lake. I know Asheville, I know North Asheville, and I also had the honor to serve on the Grove Park Sunset Mountain Neighborhood Association for a few terms, ultimately being elected to vice president, which was fun, and particularly had the pleasure of serving as the chair for the Plan on the Page process. And through that, I spent most of my 2016 surveying and helping lead a committee, including with John over there, as we broke out into area managers, each person surveying, knocking on doors, sending out solicitations, multiple emails to really solicit survey and inputs. And part of that I have with me and have copies for everyone as well.
You can, and if you want to put anything there, just put it right over there.
This touches on simply the neighborhood challenges that almost verbatim touches on multimodal improvements and the challenges with Charlotte Street. It's one thing to run down Charlotte Street on the sidewalks. It's another thing to push a double stroller. I personally have avoided going to Metro Wines a few times when I'm pushing my kids in a stroller, would love to grab a wine, but there's no way I'm walking on those sidewalk sections in front of John's store. I think that in this particular scenario, if you build it, they will come. You're going to elicit all sorts of folks that will use their bike lanes. You will walk to things much more frequently, multiple businesses along that corridor. And also to my neighbors who I really value, love, and appreciate their activism. Part of that Plan on the Page was really trying to cement the fact that we don't want development past Edwin, especially from a commercial standpoint. And unfortunately, with the current traffic counts, until there is some type of reduction in that all of a sudden this area is primed for some real significant development, as it's hard to compete against that. Whereas if we are able to make it a little bit more multimodal, pedestrian friendly, there still will be development, but it's going to encourage the more engaged development that us residents will really value and appreciate, and would greatly encourage everyone to see that. And just finding it a little painful that it seems that this has become almost a more proxy battle against the Fuddruckers proposal, as just in trying to keep track with my neighbors and what's going on at the board. I saw nothing about concerns until that proposal in August, and then they've only seen references due to traffic ever since, versus ignoring the Plan on the Page challenges, as well as ultimately, what we were trying to do, align with the city council goals and really advocate and push for that infrastructure investment. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, anyone else wishing to speak? Oh, I did say yes back there, yes.
I first want to thank the mayor and the city council for all the work that you've done with Charlotte Street. And I've been involved with this issue since 2009. My family's owned a home on Albemarle Road since 1934. And I myself was born and brought home from the hospital there in 1943. So I've been watching a lot of changes for my 75 years. And I have a lot I could say, but I just want to make 2 points. And that is, on this road, if you're going either direction, everything has to slow down for whomever is turning, left or right. If we have a middle lane, then the person's turning slow down and the traffic continues to flow. The other thing is that I've learned a lot. I first wasn't in favor of bike lanes, but then I realized how many bike rallies and bike clubs and so forth there are that go across the street. Also, I was temporarily disabled myself for a few years. And I couldn't walk. I stopped walking on Charlotte Street because the cars came so close to the curb of the sidewalk. And I know that's an issue. We need to make them smoother for disabled people. But I do think that the compromise of having a bike lane, which allows the pedestrians walking on the sidewalk to have a little more room away from the cars, is a good thing. And that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
I'm sorry, I'm Keita Osteen Cochran. I live on Albemarle Road, 1 block off.
Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Yes, Mike. Mike, we have you to thank for so many emails.
You have the community to thank for
Yes,
so many
that's
emails.
right.
My name is Mike Sewell. I'm the Executive Director of Asheville on Bikes. Our mission is to cultivate the culture of urban and community riding through advocacy and celebration, because we believe that cycling has a direct impact on the health of our community. I wanted to clarify one thing about our support, our robust support for this project is that to be pro-bike is not to be anti-pedestrian. And in fact, we can look at our recent success on Cox Avenue, and what we did is we opted for a multi-use trail for the benefit of both pedestrians and bicyclists. We get it that we are all in this together in terms of active transportation, but when a project comes up, you deal with the project at hand. If the whole scope included the sidewalks, you would have the cycling community supporting that as well. We have the opportunity to support the advancing of bicycle infrastructure, so we're going to do that. This is, you probably have seen this before, and part of the work of AOB is we recognize that 60% of the people who are interested and curious in riding are not riding because there are a lack of bicycle facilities. So if we want, with the infill, you've heard lots of concern about infill, that people are coming and moving, our population is growing. If we want to reduce congestion, the only way to do that is to diversify the mode share, to provide other opportunities for people to move about the city. If it was just road widening, LA and Atlanta would be the models of success, as we know they are not. I wanted to circle back. We talked about the community and presenting more opportunities. This is our after-school bicycle club. We have 4 hired instructors. We provide the students with everything that they need. That club, in its 7 years, has never had the opportunity to ride on Charlotte. But once we built the facilities, people show up. The mode share is diversified. So we fully support the road diet, the inclusion of bikes facilities on Charlotte. Thank you.
And Mike, thank you so much, and to all your folks for the Cox Avenue work. Yeah. I gotta say, I've never seen anything get such a positive reception. Good job.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You took the road diet with you. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Yes.
Hi, my name is Will Hornaday, and I'm the spokesperson for the Charlotte Street Business Association. And we formed to support business-to-business connectivity, just so that you could go to one store and feel safe to go to the other. And then also that for neighbors to come down and use the facility, use the businesses that are there. And these, the stormwater improvements, there's going to be a great help for that. The sidewalk improvements, or the spot safety. And I like how y'all are talking about adding sidewalks to it. I think that'd be great, and everybody would like that. But as money comes, we hope that this isn't the end for Charlotte Street, and this is a continued relationship. When Merriman was talked about being expanded by the DOT, there was a lot of uproar about how it would look, and this is something that the city controls, one of the few northbound streets. And so this is a great opportunity to make a template for future growth in the city, what you want it to look like what Cox Avenue looks like is a great downtown thing, but taking parts from Cox and parts of what's going to happen on Charlotte Street, I hope that there's a lot of other neighborhoods that get this same sort of attention and growth. So the business group sees this as following what we were formed to hope to encourage. And so we fully support the consultant coming in. And we hope that you take all the emails, pro and con, that you've gotten and take to this consultant, because there's a lot of, real concerns that are there in the community that I would, that in those January and February meetings, that they can go and discuss that with them. And plus the plans on a page that the neighborhoods worked on, like Grove Park and Albemarle and Chestnut Hill and Heart of Chestnut Hill as well. So anyway, that's it. Thank you for considering this and moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Yes.
Hi, my name is Amy Hornaday, and I'm here to represent the Preservation Society of Asheville and Buncombe County as current board president, and my family as a resident of Albemarle Park. First, I'll read the statement from PSABC Board. Dear council members, at our regularly scheduled board meeting on November 7th, the PSABC Board unanimously supported the proposed Charlotte Street Improvements Project, including spot safety and stormwater improvements, milling and repaving of Charlotte Street, and planning and implementation of a road diet. PSABC, along with our friends at the Charlotte Street Business Association, the Chestnut Hill Liberty Street neighborhood, the Charlotte Street neighborhood, and Albemarle Park urge City Council to proceed with this long-studied and long-overdue project. Similar nearby safety improvements on Charlotte, Edwin, Macon, and Kimberly Avenues have proved highly successful in support of that residential area, and now is the time for strategic improvements along the commercial section of Charlotte Street in anticipation of the exciting work brought by the Innovation District designation. Thank you in advance for your consideration of this request and for your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else who would like to speak on this item? Okay. We have a motion and a second, and I'll just begin by saying I appreciate all the input we've received from the community. It's been clear and concise, and it's been very difficult to try to correspond with everyone who's emailed us because there's been quite a bit, but I've tried to do some. And I will just offer, I live in North Asheville, and some of the comments we've received are, I live in North Asheville, and maybe you don't, so you won't have this experience. But my family's lived in North Asheville since 1988, and I have had the experience of pushing a stroller, a single stroller, a double stroller, walking, running, you name it, along Charlotte Street for many, many years. And I would just hope that for those who are, I am very supportive of this project. I would just hope for those who are concerned and don't have concerns that it will actually work, one of the benefits, I would say, of being in the role of council is we have had the opportunity to go to other cities and look at what they've experienced and changes that they have made. We are not the first to try this out by any means. There are many other examples of places that have done it. So there's a lot of good information. About it. I mean, even Kathy Ball has been willing to bike all over the city of Minneapolis just to experience all of their bike infrastructure. She did it. And I did it too, and it was really hot. But they have a bike lane on every downtown street. I mean, right there in major urban areas where people are driving to work, and they have a different infrastructure. But we were able to experience that. We've been to Fort Collins. We've looked at Charleston and Savannah. We've been to Boulder, Colorado. I've been to Portland, Maine. We're not just making this decision in a vacuum. We're trying to look at what are some successes that we've seen in other places that work, and find solutions for us. Charlotte Street is dangerous. It is very dangerous. Our previous city attorney's mother was killed crossing Charlotte Street many years ago. It is not a safe place. And trying to use the new pedestrian infrastructure we put in, the crosswalk, is still a little bit of a leap of faith, because not every car is seeing the flashing signals or stopping for the crosswalk. So I am very hopeful that it will be a positive improvement for North Asheville, and so I don't take the decision lightly. I think it will be a good thing, and hopefully that will come to bear.
Can I just add to that? So change is hard and change is scary, and this is a big change. So I get that people are skeptical of it, and logically, it doesn't make sense why it would work, right? But I just want to Esther's point about there being lots of good information about this out there. If you want some good information, I would point you to a fact sheet put out by, not a particularly radical organization, and certainly not even mainly a transportation organization, but the AARP, good old AARP, has a document on road diets, and included in that is a myth-busting section of that fact sheet, and it addresses a lot of the things that we've heard tonight about, traffic's going to get diverted and it's not as safe and people are it increases congestion, and it addresses a lot of that. And I would just, for those who are skeptical, encourage you to just Google AARP and road diet, and this fact sheet will come up and you can take a look at it, and hopefully that'll help alleviate some concerns.
Just while we're on this topic and we have the bully pulpit, I would also offer that it is inevitable that Asheville is going to grow. We have seen forecasts that our population growth is going to grow. The state of North Carolina is projected to grow significantly. We're one of the fastest growing states in the nation, and we know the highest growth areas are actually in Charlotte and Raleigh. And the answer is not to continue to widen roads in perpetuity. We won't, people talk to us about, our city's changing, it doesn't feel as livable, it's not the place I remember. And what cities are trying to do in reaction to this pressure of growth is reclaim their urban vibrancy, to make sure it remains a place where you can walk, or you can ride a bike, or you can ride a bus, or you can feel comfortable experiencing the urban portions of your city. And I know it seems somewhat counterintuitive because transportation departments have taught us since the inception of the highway that what the answer is to double the size of the streets. And I love running into people that have lived in Asheville, and they'll say, I remember when Hendersonville Road was a dirt road. Or I remember when I could sled down Merriman and it was a 2-lane road, not a 4-lane road. And Charlotte was once a 2-lane road. And so I know that it seems counterintuitive that we don't just continue to widen and widen, because that's what we've been taught. But there is a new thinking in terms of managing the future of urban growth in it, not just in Asheville, but everywhere. And I think that if we want to preserve what makes Asheville special, we have got to make sure that we allow people to experience the city in all ways. And so I hope that will resonate with folks. And I hope we've already seen some examples. We've done this on College Street, actually. It's already happened on Weaver. I don't know if you remember, many years ago, Weaver used to be 4 lanes, and then they took out a lane and put in a greenway. So this is not an entirely new concept, and we're hopeful it is a step towards allowing our city to be experienced by everyone in a more enjoyable way. Okay, now I'm done. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Right. Okay, we've got to move on to the next item on our agenda. We have a couple of other items under new business. The first item, or the second item, is a revised proposal for 360 Hilliard Avenue from rental to condominium. And Jeff, yes, you're here. Just one moment, we're clearing. Do you want to keep that up?
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Good to see you tonight to discuss the revised proposal by Cassinger Development Group for 360 Hilliard, which you might remember was known as the Parks Maintenance Facility. You clearly know the history of this, we're talking probably a year and a half ago. We had an RFP process through a lot of review. One developer dropping out, Cassinger Development Group was chosen to move forward with their proposal to develop 64 rental units on the Hilliard Street property, of which 33 were affordable to households at 80% of median income and 13% affordable to households at 60% of median income. And I have a summary here just to provide a little bit of help in terms of looking, is that clear enough? A little bit of just comparison. I can slide that up and down as need be, I'm sure, of the original proposal, so you can see what was originally proposed and the current proposal. Chip and Payne Cassinger, who are here today, came to staff a couple months ago and said, construction costs have gone up 25 to 40%. Our new numbers, even though we've worked diligently with HUD for a guarantee, and we really want to do this project, we can't produce the rents that we're. Would you be open to another way of doing this? And staff said, certainly, let's see what you can come up with. And in conversation, we began talking about home ownership as an opportunity, as a different way to use this property, but still to provide the same benefit as a mixed income community for primarily low and moderate income persons that was close to our downtown, in fact, part of our central business district. And would provide the amenities of that walking environment in an affordable way for households in our community. So that proposal is now in front of you. They are proposing 64 condominiums, 33 of which would be affordable to households at 80% of median income or less, a minimum of 13 that would be affordable to households earning 60% or less of median income. The pricing for the affordable units is $135,000 for a one-bedroom, $155,000 for a two-bedroom. And they're using the pricing of the market units in part to subsidize the lower cost units at those price points. The cost of production per unit is about $198,000 per unit. They've asked the city to keep its housing trust fund as an important part of the financing picture, but instead of long-term financing, to provide it as construction financing on a 3-year term. They've also asked the city to put $375,000 to leave that in the property, and they would pay half of the value, appraised value of the property of $750,000. They would pay half of that to the city, but leave $375,000 as subsidy in the city, in the property, in order to help create the affordability of those units. I know that the unit mix has been important, and you can see that there are affordable units as 28 one-bedroom and 5 two-bedroom units. They were asked at the HCD committee whether that mix was malleable, and they've already spent $500,000 on their design and process, and moving forward with the HUD process, which didn't get anywhere. So at this point in time, that is not malleable. This is the unit mix that they perceive to work. Their market analysis says it works in terms of the market, with approval, they would guarantee those prices and would move forward with land clearing in February and construction in March. Construction completed roughly 9 months to a year from that point. They further agreed and have maintained the agreement that they would pay half of the cost of the construction of a parking lot that would serve the tennis center that would be behind the tennis courts, and would actually do the construction as part of their general contract, and have guaranteed a price to the city for that as well. So that's their proposal. The one thing I will mention is that in terms of marketing those affordable units, you may have seen this addition to your staff report, but I'll just state it clearly here, that the Housing Authority would be a very amenable partner in marketing those affordable units to households who are housing voucher holders, so are residents of housing either owned by the Housing Authority now or as housing choice vouchers in the community. It is legal for those vouchers to be used for mortgage payments. They have about 50 households participating in their home ownership program, many of those with individual development accounts, which could be used for down payment. And we are agreeing that an aspirational goal of 20 of the 64 units would be sold to occupied by households who are currently Housing Authority residents. We also see that the community land trust, as it grows and matures, would also be a great partner here, and to have some of those units owned and controlled by the community land trust, should they move in the direction that the community home, the land trust in Chapel Hill has moved into, that would also be something that would increase diversity at the site and ensure long-term affordability. Chip and Payne are glad to answer any questions, and as am I as you work on your deliberation of this proposal.
I really want to see this project, like, something happen on it. And so, and I know this has been difficult. It's been, I don't know how many iterations we've seen of it, but it's been more than a few. With the sale of the land to the developer, I guess I'm struggling with how does the city make sure that over a 50-year period of time that the developer is complying with all the with the affordability component of it, other than taking them to court? And, you know, when we were doing a long-term lease, it's like, well, you can I mean, that's a pretty easy thing, right? You could go back and say, okay, your lease is done, we're taking the property back. But when we sell the land, I'm just struggling with, I mean, not that I question the intent of the developer or anything like that, but, you know, if the developer were to sell or things changed, I don't want to put the city into a situation where, I guess that's my question. How do we make sure that the affordability period for a 50-year period of time is going to stick?
I would view that as two questions.
Okay.
One would be, while the developer is still in an ownership role, which is until the units are sold, and then the developer is no longer an owner. It's you know, the individual households who own their condominium units with the homeowners association that holds title to the land itself becomes the owner. So in the short run,
right, in the 3 years, I get it.
We will monitor
right.
every sale closely and can, in fact, have a provision that we review the income qualifying status of every affordable unit as a part of the sales transaction. In the longer term, the proposal is that we have in each individual condominium deed of trust a covenant, a deed, covenant, and restriction that limits the sale for that 50-year period to households that again will meet the income qualifications that were originally established when we made this happen. Now, I know there are instances that happen when cash sales oftentimes where perhaps the title search process isn't as rigorous as it might be otherwise, but this typically is the mechanism that is used to ensure affordability over that period of time. I would also suggest that the other thing that we could do is we could ensure that the city or the community land trust had a right of first refusal, and that at that time of sale, the sales price, the unit at the affordable sales price would have to be offered to the city. And that could be a mechanism actually, if employed, could actually extend that 50-year period onto a far longer period, in fact, a permanent affordability, as permanent as the state of North Carolina allows, which is about 99 years. So those would be the strategies that I would put in place to protect the mission that the city is trying to achieve here of affordability over the long term.
So, okay, I mean, I can be supportive of this if, I mean, again, those details aren't in our staff report, and I realize that, you know, I'm sure these are details, but, you know, just whatever we can do as a city to just make sure that, that our goals are being implemented consistently when we're all dead and gone or whatever, that with this sale. So that would be, and I think that's city staff's job to just use every tool you can without being crazy about it, to just ensure that this affordability portion of this project is in effect as long as possible, and that we don't have to take someone to court to get it. So.
Thank you. And I think that the city staff is on your wavelength.
Does anyone, other questions?
Real quick, I just want to say thanks to Chip and Payne for figuring this out and coming back as opposed to just walking in and dropping it back on Jeff's desk and saying, yeah, we can't make it work. This is, I think, a really creative solution that gets to one of the city's other goals. Earlier, I guess it was earlier this year, we voted to put affordable home ownership on par with affordable rental, and this is going to be really the first project that moves us in that direction. It's a great, I don't want to say it's a great experiment. I think it's going to be a great success and dovetails well with the Community Land Trust and other down payment assistance, things that we're still trying to figure out. So just thank you for hanging in there and being willing to make it work. Really appreciate that.
Just one question. Are the developers okay with what Jeff was talking about here in terms of some of the strategies to the Vice Mayor's question? I just want to make sure the developers are okay with what was discussed as possible strategies.
Chip Gaffney, that's my son, not the other way around.
You could have fooled us.
We appreciate the opportunity. We're sorry it's kind of gone through all the iterations, but we've reviewed what I think Councilman Young and Kathy Ball had earlier this evening worked on, and we want to keep moving that direction. We know all the details are not tied up, but we believe we're there, and so we're excited. Just appreciate the opportunity. Really do. And want it to be a model for other people to do the same thing.
Sure. And again, part of my ignorance here, my nativity, this is my first rodeo going through one of these things. In terms of what the Vice Mayor asked about, in terms of to make sure that we wouldn't have to go back into court or things like that. Is that something that the developer would need to agree to at the time that they at the time of the sale, or how would that process work? Because again, I mean, it sounds like those are some of the things that would be a really good idea, and we just want to make sure that's something while we're here discussing it that they actually
we would agree to those things up front. We have to, of course, get our lender as well to agree to those conditions, because there is a risk, things not selling or whatever. But Jeff's given a 3-year period of us try to sell this out, so we've modeled it, to try to get that accomplished. The goal would be, of course, much sooner, but everything would be agreed up front. And our our belief is that those units would survive the project till, in perpetuity. That's what we agreed.
I'll just note that one of the best practices in terms of community land trust activities, and is something also practiced by Habitat for Humanity, is that first right of refusal, because that all protects the homeowner as much as it protects the affordability, because they know that there is a buyer for that property. That will make sure that the property, by making sure it stays affordable, they also are making sure that there is somebody that will buy it to ensure that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Does any other council members have any questions or?
Yeah. I don't have any questions.
Okay. Do you have a comment? Go ahead.
So when we come down the road, I'll be prepared to make a motion unless anybody else does. But and I have a few bullet points here because I don't want to miss anything in my thought process. Since joining the HCD committee earlier this year with Julie and Shanika, we've been able to make several wording changes in policy, kind of in order to adapt to the changing needs of our city and support affordable housing needs, while also trying to address gentrification issues and however we can move forward on that front. And what I noticed was the absence of subsidies for low-income homeowners and the extremely low home ownership rate amongst subsidized households. Previously, that previously suggested to me that there was a strong policy bias against home ownership and a preference for rental units, any rental units. And at the same time this preference was occurring, you kind of, we found out, that Asheville was the second fastest gentrified city in America with the lack of affordable home ownership options at the lower price points. And so the project that's here tonight is a direct reflection of the recent policy changes, and as Julie said, will be the first project before council that will directly secure ownership opportunities for those at the lowest or lower price points of our community. And that directly contributes to providing generational wealth to those who would not otherwise have an opportunity in such an expensive and desirable area such as downtown. So I want to applaud the developer for coming back to the board and utilizing those policy changes to make this happen. You agreed to affordable units, and I want to bring a message to council from Shonda Sanford, who is actually she's the program manager for the Family Self-Sufficiency Program and Home Ownership Program for city housing. Yeah, that's right. She's not on city council yet. So she gave me a message to relay to everyone. She couldn't be here tonight. She runs that program. She wanted to say that this opportunity has the potential to be a major vehicle for our residents who face significant barriers to become homeowners and build wealth and economic opportunity right here in the city of Asheville. Other positive effects identified with home ownership include improved outcomes for our children, who we hope will want to live here and become future leaders of our community. I also probably should note that Ms. Sanford is also the chairwoman of the Asheville City Schools Board of Education. So moving on, and I'll wrap it up here. The city of Asheville is also providing new policy direction on NHCD for our down payment assistance program that we will hopefully be wrapping up here in the next couple of weeks or months or so with policy direction. And just in case folks are wondering how many housing authority residents are eligible for housing choice vouchers that'll commit funds toward their mortgages, I can't give you an exact number, but it's every single one of them. So what this does is this is an opportunity. This opens up a lane of home ownership that these folks would not otherwise have in this price point. And so these folks have had these housing choice vouchers before, but they haven't had the opportunities to use them because the price points within the city are so high. So what this does is it provides the opportunity for ownership, and ownership isn't for everyone, but what it also does is it takes advantage of building generational wealth and possibly lifting some families out of poverty for years to come. So I want to thank the developer, and I'm going to support the project.
Thank you.
Holly's up here. Anyone else have any questions?
No more questions.
Okay, thank you.
So we have no motion.
We don't have
What Keith
Okay, if there's not any other questions or comments on council, do I have a motion?
I didn't open it up to.
Yeah, we'll do it
We
after
do
the,
that
yeah, after the
afterward,
motion.
Sure, I'll make a motion. I recommend that the city council accept the revised Cassenger proposal for the redevelopment of 360 Hilliard Avenue as a mixed income for sale development, including accepting the revised proposal for the use of $1,280,000 of housing trust funds, eliminating the commitment of a land use incentive grant, and agreeing to subdivide 360 Hilliard Avenue parcel and sell to Cassenger the portion of that parcel to be used for the construction of the project.
Second.
Shanika gets a second.
She can have it.
She got it. All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there anyone wishing to comment on the motion? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Yes.
Thank you. Mayor, I was wondering at this time if it would be okay for us to introduce Michael Blair. Michael Blair is our new Community Development Manager.
Oh, Michael, the hundreds of
If
people
you want
watching
to come
want to see you.
forward, Michael. Yeah, that would be great.
Get used to
All
it.
the way
Get
here.
used to
So
Okay.
after Heather left, Jeff was nice enough to come back and work with us. And then now we have recruited Jeff from Greensboro area. I mean, Michael from Greensboro area. So if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely, and again, I'm very happy to be here, and the opportunity is wonderful, and so far from what I've seen in 2 weeks, it's a great program and a great city. I come from the Piedmont Triad Regional Council of Governments that's based in Kernersville. That's the largest regional council in North Carolina. Was running a Section 8 voucher program as well as a home program and rehabilitation programs to the Housing Finance Agency. And we're a 12-county COG, but we were in 15 counties going outside to Wilkes and Ash. So been involved with the Community Development Block Grant and all that, and I hopefully can put that to use here. So thank you.
Welcome.
Council, there was a second resolution as part of item B under new
the loans
business,
fund.
and we need to address
catch.
that second resolution.
Okay.
It's a two-parter.
What did the second resolution entail?
It's to improve the housing trust fund.
To approve the loans from the Housing Trust Fund.
The
Did I not
corresponding.
say that?
Well, it requires two different motions.
It
I don't know.
requires a second vote.
You can say so moved.
Just say so moved.
Would the city attorney like to state that? And then I
Why
can-
don't you state the motion so we can have that for.
Okay.
That's it.
This is it? All right.
A motion to authorize the manager to execute documents.
I'll let her do it.
So, right.
Everybody.
The one that you read before was authorizing the city manager to execute, correct?
Okay.
The contract. And now the second one is a resolution to allow a loan of 1.2 or 1,280,000 at 2% amortizing interest. You see that?
And
For 3 years to Cassenger
Yes.
Development
All
Group
right.
for the development and construction.
So I'll make a motion that the city authorize a loan of $1,280,000 at 2% amortizing interest for 3 years to Cassenger Development Group for the development and construction of the 64 mixed income for sale condominium units at 360 Hilliard Avenue to be made immediately available for disbursement following the loan closing. 33 of the total units are to be restricted to families earning 80% or less of the area median income, with 13 of those units being restricted to families earning 60% AMI or less, using city down payment assistance as necessary to achieve this, and including voucher accepted 50% AMI. The affordable units shall have a 50-year affordability period enforced by a deed covenant and form acceptable to the city attorney.
Second.
all right, now we have a motion and a second. Anyone wishing to speak on this motion? Nope. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And can I just say, because this may be your last time in front of council, just thank you again and again.
I don't really believe that
I
that's
don't
actually
exactly.
going to happen.
Yeah.
That's not.
He'll be back.
Give me a break. We
We
already
have to-
went through this.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But just saying it again. Thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, now we're down to boards and commissions, and I'm turning it over to the Vice Mayor.
Great. So we did not receive any applications for the Board of Electrical Examiners and the Citizens Police Academy for the Housing Authority residents, so we will continue to advertise for those positions. The Boards and Commissions recommends that we appoint for the ABC Board January West and Max Hayner. That's a motion. Can I get a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? For the Homeless Initiative Advisory Committee, the Boards and Commissions recommends the appointment of Dale Davidson.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? For the I-26 Aesthetics Task Force, the Boards and Commissions recommends the appointment of Kenneth Dirks and Susan Loftus.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. For the Neighborhood Advisory Committee, this is for the West Asheville representation. The recommendation is to appoint Anna Saxton.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. For the Public Art and Cultural Commission, the Boards and Commission recommends Valeria Watson for appointment.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great.
Okay.
Once again, hard choices to make, and really appreciate all the citizens who jump in and want to participate.
Okay, I have two people signed up to speak tonight under public comment. The first is Tammy Summy. And public comment works like all other comment. You have 3 minutes. Thanks.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I'm Tammy Summy. I'm here to discuss my safety concern. I have a recently incident where I did the early voting. I voted at the West Asheville branch. As I walked in to get my information, they handed me my ballot. As I was standing there filling out my ballot, I overheard, some people talking, and I overheard, apparently it was the person that was the people that be following me say something about assault on a government official, which I do have on my record, and from back in '95, and I heard apparently it was the volunteers say, "Oh my, do she have a gun?" And then I heard the excuse me, I'm sorry, oh God, let me hurry up. I heard the other volunteer, I heard one stated, "Is she eligible to vote?" And then the person, that's be following me stated, "Oh, it's a misdemeanor." And I just feel very uncomfortable. I know they was talking about me, and I just think that's not right, and how they know is because of the people that was following me, and I think there's some type of high security people or whatever. I would need to get down to it. That's how they knew. And I did report it to the Board of Elections, and I spoke with her, Mrs. Fox, just over that, what happened. But I just felt so uncomfortable, and I don't think that was right for them to discuss that, and handle things like that when I went to go vote. But it's just unbelievable what I heard them discuss, But
Well, thank you for telling us about it, and I'm glad you reported it to the Board of Elections.
Oh, yes, I did. Yes, I did. And I'm more concerned with my safety with those people following me, you know, going around tape my name like that, you know. And when I walked out of the election, well, you know, the library where I voted, the people were just standing there. And I walked to my car, and also, when I got in my car, that's when they left. They did not vote. I saw them. It was a man and a woman. And I called back at the library. Okay.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
The next person I've signed up to speak is Velvet Hawthorne.
So it's till the end?
Oh, wait, this same video.
Good evening. This is my narration of a video. It's not the only video I've taken in the last few months. This was taken on October 31st, and it was in the middle of the afternoon, and as we know, this is Whole Foods. That's the loading dock. Prior to me forwarding this video, some of these trucks weren't there, and then the FedEx truck was parked there blocking traffic. The UPS truck is down the street waiting. We have multiple vehicles, multiple trucks lining up, waiting. There's a tractor trailer already backed up into this one point here. What I'm seeking is some assistance to work with Whole Foods. I know the city has had discussions with them. I've seen tiny improvements. As you all know, I had over $6,000 worth of damage done to my car. My car was in the shop for over 30 days, and 2 weeks ago, another vehicle in my neighborhood was dragged up the street and wrecked. And while the tow truck came to move the vehicle because they couldn't find the owner, the tow truck moved, and then the truck moved and smashed into the tow truck driver. So I'm watching this go on a regular basis over and over. It's very noisy. People can't cross the sidewalk. There was a woman with a stroller one day that had to cross the street right here because she couldn't go down the sidewalk because there were trucks over the sidewalk. The police have been there multiple times. There's another video that I have of a recycling truck, and it's not a normal size recycling truck. It's almost the size of a tractor trailer. He parked right in front of my house, which is on the corner of Maxwell and Marcellus, proceeded to put cones in front of his truck and behind his truck so that no one on the street could get through. And I opened the door, and he came to me and he said, "Could you tell me how I'm supposed to get into that loading dock?" And I said, "I really don't know. You should probably ask the people at the store." So again, he sat there for a good 20 minutes. They wheeled an empty bin up around to the store, and then they brought the full one around and dumped it right in front of I could sit on my porch. I had the front row seat of the whole show. And it doesn't stop. It's really worse during the week. The weekends, obviously, it slows down. But traffic can't get through. Pedestrians are at risk of being run over. I just see it all the time. It's hard to sit out on my front porch and even enjoy my afternoon or evenings because this goes on from probably 5 or 6 in the morning until 6 or 7 or 8 o'clock at night sometimes. And believe it or not, the truck drivers are frustrated too. I know Whole Foods has tried to communicate with them about where they should pull in. I really think we should have the no trucks over 10,000 pounds sign on our street. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next person signed up to speak is Ben Airing.
Hi, I'm Ben. I'm a current student at Warren Wilson College in Swannanoa. and we're doing a podcast on the Vance Monument in downtown. And we've been discussing in class a lot about its impact to different communities in Asheville, particularly the African American community in Asheville, given the arguably oppressive nature of Vance and what he stands for. So I wanted to, if possible, field a question, if there's any comment to the nature of whether or not the Vance Monument is appropriate to be displayed on public property downtown.
So this is the public comment period where statutorily city councils are required to allow the public to come speak, and we don't usually do a Q&A. But many people have reached out to us about our opinions about the Vance Monument, and I certainly would be glad to meet with you and talk with you about it at some other time. Or if you want to send us written questions, whatever way works best for your project. You are not the first class to have this project.
Yeah.
So we're set up for that. We can accommodate that. So if you want to give your information to the clerk, we can make a time to do that.
I think we've got it.
Oh, you're right, Maggie, thank you. We have your email address right here.
Yeah. All right.
So would that work for you?
Yes.
I don't
Thank
know
you so
what
much for your
timeline
time.
is. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Those are the folks I have signed up to speak. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda? Yes.
Hi, my name's Jonathan Wainscott. I wanted to thank you for a lot of things. Mayor, thanks for taking a stand on the hotels being subsidized by residents. Your statement about that a few weeks ago. Wanted to thank you for that. Thank you for bringing up the M-word moratorium, perhaps, on the issue. Want to thank staff for coming out to the community budget meetings. Tremendous amount of staff who've been coming out, pulling extra hours to meet with the community. There's 4 of them. I've gone to 3. The first one was in West Asheville, which is where I live, and I have to say I'm sorry that it was so sparsely attended by my neighborhood, but I'm glad that it was so well attended by you guys. We had 4 council people, the mayor, the vice mayor, Julie was there, Keith was there, and it was conducted by Barbara Whitehorn, who was the chief person of finances, so it was a great show. Sorry the attendance wasn't so great. I noticed, though, that in the snapshot that Barbara gave of, the sort of, what's going on in Asheville, the growth, the median house price, wages, and all that kind of stuff. One of the things that was included was the age groups here in Asheville, but what was not included was the growth chart of the African American community. So I didn't really think about that until I got home, went to the next meeting to see if this was something that was left out, and once again, that was left out. That meeting, that wasn't conducted by Barbara Whitehorn, it was the assistant guy. Unfortunately, I can't remember his name. And Mr. Young was there, VJ was there, and so I brought it to VJ's attention and some other people that this is an important piece of information that Barbara gave to City Council several months ago, and it shows that the African American community is declining. So then I went back to the meeting in East Asheville, and the meeting had gone from having 4 council members, mayor, vice mayor, to no council members. Barbara wasn't there, the information wasn't included, and so I feel that in our environment of equity and inclusion and all that kind of stuff, the information that's given to the small amount of people who showed up in West Asheville is not the same as the very large number of people who came out in East Asheville. It was very well attended. It's unfortunate that you guys weren't there to meet with people and have a dialogue with them. And so I'm hoping that, maybe Mr. Haynes and Shanika can make it to the next meeting, and that the information about the African American community that is in decline is presented to the public, because it's a huge problem. And in order for us to care about it, we need to be aware of it. So I just want to make sure that that information is included and that everybody is there. And thanks again for all the staff who have been going out there and doing it. Thank you for all of your efforts.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak at this point? Okay. We do not have a
We
closed
do
session.
not.
Which is-
When's the
woo!
last time that happened?
This is unusual. So we're, unless does anyone else have any? No, but I was thinking, I did want to announce that we're hosting the Metro Mayors in Asheville this week, Thursday and Friday. So mayors from around the state will be coming here, and staff has worked really hard to put together a nice tour of some of the things we're doing here, so that they'll be able to see some of that. So thanks to staff for all their hard work, and they'll be participating in that and showing them around. So this is, we've had Metro Mayors to Charlotte and Rocky Mount and Wilmington and Durham and all over the state. So this is our chance to host them. Since I've been with Metro Mayors, this will be our second time. So it'll be nice. Okay, anybody else? Nope. All right, so we're adjourned.